here's my examples, and I'm not going to do very many because it's if I were you sitting there, I would be frustrated because your numbers are not the same as my numbers, and so what's the point of watching my numbers over and over and over again when you could be doing your numbers? So all you have to do is see the pattern. If they give you the sine function, then you've got all your paperwork out if you don't remember the formulas, and you eventually play this game enough that you'll remember the formulas. And your number might not be my number, but it might be close. But you know, close isn't on it, so you have to just watch the pattern and go. And then they give you the quadrant. So that's quadrant 1. Between 0 and pi over 2, if you remember from your unit circle. I'm not making this up. That's how they describe quadrants. They usually use radians from 0 to pi over 2. So that'll get used to you'll get used to the radian story after a while with that. And then they say round it to 3 decimal places. So I use the cosine formula. Isn't that so cool? I'm going to go ahead and put in parentheses, but you don't have to put them in your calculator, you know. And because it's in quadrant 1, the cosine answer is positive. So then I do my calculator and I get 0.858. I think it's 8577 something. So if you want to put in the parentheses, that's fine. But you don't have to. Have it right here. See, I didn't bother putting in the 0 in front. I didn't have to put in parentheses. So you just use the formula, either the cosine one or the sine one. Let me show you those. I'll use that one if I need cosine, use that one if you need sine. Oh, don't you love math when it's, you know, a great simple pattern like that. So that's number 1 through 8. You just have to get the sign right, correct? Yeah. Make sure you're in the right quadrant sign. Now, here, number 9. Woo! The game changes. Yep, all that. Okay. So we're going to jump to number 9. And it says find the approximate value for each trig function. We're given the tangent is about negative 3.965. Remember, tangents can be bigger than 1. Our sines and cosines aren't, you know, if you take the absolute value of your number, they're always less than 1. But when you're taking ratios, you can end up with a ratio bigger than 1. And it says it's in the pi over 2 to pi quadrant, which is quadrant 2. And find sine and cosine. So this is what you have to remember. That sine over cosine is tangent. Oh, you're not seeing what I'm writing. I am so sorry. There we go. That's the secret. So we've got the value of tangent. That equal this ratio sine over cosine. So it's like having 2 variables in a story problem. You have to solve for one variable. So in this case, we're going to solve for sine by taking both sides times cosine theta. So our sine value in terms of cosine is an expression like this. Okay? We just did some algebra. Now we plug it in to the formula that cosine theta equals the square root, well, yep. I could do it this way or I could put it in the other one. There's a couple of different ones. Since I already started this, I'll do that. 1 minus, and so instead of sine squared, that's the cosine, yep, sine squared theta, I'm going to put in this expression. So cosine theta equals 1 minus, and I put in a parentheses my negative 3.965 cosine theta, and it's being squared. See that? Now I got to simplify this, get cosines on the same side, and then solve for cosine theta. So cosine, I got to get rid of the square root button. So I'm going to square both sides. And when I square, here's where it gets a little crazy, because how much do you round when you square 3.965? Okay, so I get 15.721. I'm going to go ahead and just round it to 3 places, and then I square the cosine. There we go. So this squares, and I add this to both sides. Remember, this is 1 cosine squared plus 15.721 cosine squared gives me 16.721. Cosine squared equals 1. So I just added it to both sides, and then I divide by the decimal. So it's cosine squared theta is this fraction. Okay, so I'm going to take 1 over 16.721, which goes to 0.0598. Then I take the square root of both sides. Second square root, second answer, 0.245. Now, because I am in the second quadrant, means that's a negative answer. So it's a negative 0.245. Cosines are negative in quadrant 2. So how do I find sine? Well, we had that up there, that negative 3.965 times my negative 0.245 is the sine. Remember, this was tangent times the cosine is the sine. One more multiplier, I get 0.970 for my sine. And so in quadrant 2, that's a positive. So my first answer in my box is the sine value. And my second answer is the cosine value, which I found up here. There we go. And you're done with number 9. So that took a lot. I'm going to do another one with a different, show you up a different relationship. And the more you do, the better you'll get with, what do I do next? So my tangent is a negative 4.58. It's in 3 pi over 2 is less than theta is less than 2 pi, which is quarter 4, quadrant 4, quarter 4. Okay, quadrant 4. Cut your circle up in quarters. Find the values of the sine and the cosine, if necessary, round to 3 decimal places. So you just have to remember we're in quarter 4 after we're quadrant 4 after we're all done. So here's the, remember a tangent is the sine over the cosine. So I multiply cosine next to the tangent. And then I put it where the sine is in the formula. So the tangent they told us of. So I'm going to use, instead of that square root formula, I'm just going to use the cosine squared theta plus sine squared theta equals 1. We can use that formula. So this can go in there. Substitute and solve. So that way the cosine squared, and when I square this, I'll put it down here. Cosine squared theta plus cosine theta times the tangent was a negative 4.58, and square it equals 1. So it's a little less to do if you use this formula. Whichever one you want to use. I would, yeah, probably do that one. But the first one came to my mind first, so that's okay. So I have 1 cosine squared theta plus whatever a negative 4.58 squared is times cosine squared theta equals 1. And the negative 4.58 squared is 20.976. Cosine squared theta equals 1. So that is squaring the tangent. Whatever your tangent value is, you squared it. Okay, and then you're going to add 1 to it. Then you're going to divide both sides by it. So your cosine squared theta is a decimal, 0.0455. Take the square root of both sides, and remember what quadrant you're in. You're in quadrant 4. So my cosine answer for quadrant 4 is positive. So I get 0.213. And then I find my sine because my tangent number, negative 4.58, times my cosine number, 0.213, is my sine number. So this is my tangent number times my cosine number is my sine number. Do do that math, and I get a negative 0.976. So that's the sign. And it's in the fourth quadrant, and sure enough, signs are negative. So you put in the sign first, pay attention to that. And then you put in your cosine number. So this number is the tangent squared plus 1. And then you take the reciprocal of it, take the square root of it, and you've got your cosine number. So you can kind of take little shortcuts if you notice a pattern. But yeah, you don't want to be using, you don't want to compromise your integrity and get the answers a different way when they ask you to use those Pythagorean identities. So it's a long road to through number 16, because those are all tangent questions. Finally, when you get to number 7 or number 17. Ooh. You just have to put which function is positive and which function is negative in the list. And that's why I gave you your little notes from yesterday. This one, it's all there. So if they ask you what the sign is in quadrant 4, it's negative. They ask you what the tangent is in quadrant 2, tangent's division, so it's negative, like that, okay? So in the positive box, or in the positive column, there should be 2 boxes. 2 of the 5 that they give you are positive results, and 3 of the 5 are negative. Let me know if I can help you individually. Alrighty. Turn off the video and call it a year. We still have to do our